Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk HR. I am joined by a big panel this week of Uma, Lee, and Sharon. And with Boris Johnson recently doing an interview with the Daily Mail saying that he doesn't think working from home works, people need to get back to the office because all people do is slowly walk and make a coffee and nibble on a piece of cheese. I figured what better than to get some HR and L&D specialists to actually tell us whether or not working from home does actually work. I'm joined today, as I mentioned, from Uma, based in Pakistan, Lee in York, and Sharon in London. Sharon, how are you? You've had a race back to make this. Thank you very much.
Yeah, race back. I was actually in an office, which is kind of strange for me to say that when we're talking about hybrid working and not working in an office. But today I was visiting my Thursday client, so in the office with them, which was nice. But it does mean I have to battle with public transport, as we all do if we're kind of going to work. So, but yes, I made it back in time. But it seemed very poignant that I was in the office when we're going to be talking mostly about working from home and how hybrid working might work for us.
Are you in an office tomorrow?
No.
I see. Hybrid working.
Exactly. Well, my Thursday client is a remote first workplace. So they're a global business, and they believe that work is an activity, not a destination. So probably quite in contrast with Boris and his views. So yeah, my Tuesday client has a more hybrid, what I would call a traditional hybrid arrangement. But yeah, and I'm looking forward to hearing what Lee and Uma and yourself say about the topic.
And Lee, lovely York. I know we've seen you countlessly driving all over the country to do training and development. Is your role hybrid, or are you predominantly classroom based, I guess, as opposed to office based?
I think hybrid is probably the word, actually. I think it probably stands testament to the idea of remote work, in that I, as you say, live in York, but my nearest dealership is Manchester. I think the nearest office that I could go to work at is Manchester, so 100 miles, something like that. And our head office is Colchester. So I do travel quite a lot because it's a national role, but I am predominantly based here in York.
And Uma, I remember in a previous stream we did, when we talked about obviously people going back to work and the Great Resignation in Pakistan. I think you mentioned it was more people were just going back to the office, and that the hybrid thing didn't really sort of stick in. What about yourself? Are you a hybrid worker, being self-employed, or do you have an office and a premises you like to go to every day?
I'm totally work from home. It's basically where I live. I have my office upstairs, and it's I'm for last about 2 years. There are lots of trainings that I'm doing, and all those trainings are also from home on Zoom platform or on any other Google team. So in my case, it's for that matter, I'm really enjoying this. And it was if we enter COVID here also, I was doing work from home pre-COVID also. So it's about now about 7-8 years that I'm working from home. And for me, I'm thoroughly enjoying this. It's less of commute, and it's always at your favorite place. And I think when we'll go ahead, we should also touch about this thing, that how introverts and extroverts, extroversion plays a role in your becoming a good work from home candidate or not a good one. So I, being an introvert, I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I think you raise a really good point. CIPD released a survey today, actually, asking that very question, like, how do you engage with people? And are you still doing the same sort of engagements to make sure that you get that team dynamic when you're working from home? And you raise a really interesting point about introverts and extroverts, because one of my favorite quotes I like is, introverts don't make friends, they get adopted by extroverts. And whilst that's not necessarily true, introverts don't project themselves into situations and don't necessarily always want to sort of put themselves out there in terms of if there's a setup dynamic and stuff like that, because they can get anxious about it. How do you start to build that? So how do you bring in an introvert into a strong team, Lee? Because you're part of a strong team in Jardine, and someone new comes in. How do you make them feel part of that if you're all spread all over the place?
I mean, you can travel and go and visit them. I think just because we're based at home, it doesn't mean that we have to be glued to our little office seats. I've had a new starter in my team within the last 3 weeks or so. I've met her 3-4 times on different occasions. Travelled down to Birmingham, or different dealerships that she's visited. To add to Uma's point, I'm also an introvert. People don't believe that when they've got to know me. I'm a noisy introvert, but I think the difference is you think to speak rather than speaking to think, and being in that state of flow at home and not having the distractions is absolutely huge. So from an introvert extrovert side of things, that gives me a lot of energy, being able to sit there and concentrate for a longer amount of time.
Well, I'm not sure. I'm probably a healthy skeptic about whether or not you can make binary conclusions from a preference that we may or may not have. I think that's what I would say. I think what I've noticed, so I would say that I enjoy being around other people, so other people might consider that a trait of extroversion. And yet I've had a home office for 16 years, so well before any pandemic. And I enjoy working from home. I think it depends, for me, it's about activities. I do notice, obviously, that people who prefer, just prefer, I guess, more concentrated, focused time without distractions around them. That might be people, noise, kind of interruptions, whatever that might be, might kind of find working remotely more enjoyable because they can kind of get in the flow, as Lee said. But I just noticed that for me, it's about purpose and being intentional and probably trying to flex to other people's needs, and maybe pivot a little bit to the things that I probably used to take for granted. If I was in the same location, I now have to be a bit more active and thoughtful about how to draw people in or engage them or communicate or collaborate or whatever the purpose of what we're trying to do might be. Does that make sense? So for me, it's not really so much about the fact that I'm one of those people who actually enjoys being around people, but I'm enjoying being with you guys and we're not in the same room. Do you know what I mean? It's, for me, it's about a purpose and a coming together, and sometimes you might need to make that happen if you're in different locations.
Does it come down, though, Uma, to sort of anxiety in situations like, if you're an extrovert, you may be more comfortable to go into situations, build that connection relatively quickly, and I get your point about binary and preferences, but preferences are your preferred position in the situation. Whether or not it's who you are is a completely different thing. It's just it's a built-up anxiety to a situation if you believe you're an introvert and you don't believe that you've got that capability. So how does someone sort of build a connection, Uma? Because they say it takes 7 telephone calls to build a connection that 1 meeting makes.
Ooh.
That was a sales thing I was taught years ago.
No, it depends basically on what I have studied about. There are researches done recently on all these stuff, and it's basically more of a industry thing and more of a profession thing also. I mean, there are certain professions which definitely have very difficulty in working from home, and there are professions, I mean, the kind of profession I am in, it's a consultancy, it's basically executive search, and lots of my work or research that I'm doing, so a lot of my work can be done, and since I'm an introvert also, fortunately for me, that I could get much of these things done by myself. But then a sales professional, a person who is into an industry, and it is basically very difficult for them, and especially in Pakistan when we were forced to, and in globally, I think, when people were forced to work from home in the last couple of years, when it all got started. There was a thing which came, in fact, in terms of the balance of life, also that how all these things would be, how they would be balancing their work, and how would be the line between their home and their office got blurred. And then the real anxieties also came forward. I mean, the people, it is very difficult for them, especially in the case of in our region, where the houses are not built to be offices. They are a place where you can sit down and you relax, and you are there are kids around. And we all remember that famous BBC's show. I think that the person who was giving the interview on an international thing, and their kids and his kids throwing the room, his room, and I mean, this happened here. This happened everywhere now, and it got accepted that this is a real possibility, that you have family, you have children around you, and you still can do work. So this possibility got accepted. I mean, this is, I think, the good thing that has happened over the last couple of years, that organizations have also accepted that you have a family, and you have to live with them, you have to work with them, and you have to go back to them for your refreshments or rejuvenation, or you are coming back to the next day office in a fresh mood. But then you are not. There are times when you are not coming to office, you are sitting there in the same place where you had your kids. So the balance of life also, I mean, it has triggered the work from home, I think, has triggered a lot of other debates in terms of the saving of costs, especially for the organizations. And there are research just done, and I was just going through a research done in China in the last, and it was pre-COVID, in fact. And the ultimate result that they have come out with is that it was a company which has about 16,000 plus employees. And they said that for every employee, now it turns out that they are saving $2,000 per year on the basis of that work from home, that they have done a research on not the whole of the population, but they have selected few employees, and they did a research for 1 year. And what they came up with, that those who were working from home, they were about 20 to 25% more effective, or they did work pretty well in terms of, and they produced well as compared to the other people. So yes, there is basically lots of good things happening because of all these work from home things.
Yeah. And I'm not, we're not turning around and saying that people should just work from home. Obviously, we are saying that there needs to be a point and some time in an office.
Yeah. Exactly.
Some information Gary Cookson sent to me, who's just about to publish a book called HR for Hybrid Working on the 3rd of June. There you go, Gary, you'll be happy with that. Understanding Society found in 2021, 88% of UK workers want some office-based working, but not full-time. HR Review found in 2021 that 2/3 of employees would accept a pay cut to retain remote working a few days a week. And ACUS found, the computer manufacturer, found that work performance and productivity was slightly higher for partial remote workers, explaining that those working remotely had slightly higher levels of autonomy and control and job satisfaction. And I think, Lee, there are some jobs that are office jobs, and there are some jobs that I found that are work from home jobs. Are you finding the same thing?
Yeah, to some extent, yeah. But I think it surprised me how many jobs don't fit into those. So, for example, I have a call center background from L&D, within call center environments, and you would think that a call center, they have to be there. The technology's there, the bandwidth's there, the physical product, the server, the internet capability, the amount of privacy things that call centers have to adhere to with GDPR and so on. Nearly every call center you call now is working from home. And I love it when I call, I don't know, my bank or the insurance company, and there's a dog barking in the background. And I just think it's brilliant that people can have that comfort in what can be quite a tough job as well, actually. So I think there's a vast amount of jobs where you'd be surprised that really they could be both. But I think that actually links in a little bit to something that Uma said right at the start there, which you were talking about anxiety. From an L&D point of view, I have seen significantly more anxiety from people working from home, and that's really surprised me. And I think the introvert extrovert thing we were talking about earlier has played a point in that. I'd love to understand more of the psychology behind it, but trying to get people to put their cameras on during a training session, they feel so conscious that someone might see them. And it's a real, valid fear almost, real anxiety. They really, really dread that, which when you think about it, I don't get, because if they're in a training room or if they're in the office, everyone can see them. You can see them from head to toe. But the fact they might put their camera on and someone could actually see them, it's really surprised me how anxiety inducing that has been for a lot of people. And I think once culture kind of breeds, doesn't it? Once someone's brave, it's that awkward first one at the buffet. Once someone puts the camera on, someone else will, and everyone gets comfortable with it eventually. But yeah, I've been quite surprised by how much I've seen that.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely experienced people's hesitance to put cameras on. Part of it used to be people didn't want to give a window into their lives. They weren't happy with it. But there's blurred backgrounds. There's all these different things that people can have now. How would you approach this, Sharon? How would you coach someone if they're like, I don't want to put my camera on? How would you approach that sort of conversation? Because if they were face to face, I mean, they're in higher definition face to face than they are on a camera, aren't they?
I have to say that I've not experienced it so much. I mean, so I've done a lot of I did a whole project completely remote. So I never met my client in real life, which was very strange. For somebody who likes meeting people, developing relationships, knowing more than just the piece of work, I found that quite disconcerting personally, because usually I have more of a context than the actual work, and so just meeting everybody remotely I found quite disconcerting. But and I've also participated in lots of networking online when we were locked down. I was kind of connecting via lots of different mediums, and most of the time I would say that people felt comfortable to either be on camera or off camera. I guess it kind of depends on what the purpose is, and the context, and whether people feel a pressure to turn it on, and whether or not they feel accepted. If I was, like at the moment, I feel like I need a hair wash, for example. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, but I kind of think, well, so what, but some people don't feel that way, and it might be as simple as that. And I often find as well, I use quite a lot, if I was facilitating groups, I find that having someone to help, which allows me to then go into the chat and kind of connect with somebody on a one-to-one and say, are you okay? Yeah, I notice you haven't been chatting very much. Do you want to chat in the chat box? Would you like me to bring you in, or you just want a quiet time? I find that works quite well. So I haven't been in a situation where people have kind of said no cameras, and they haven't felt that they can open up eventually at their own pace. But like I say, it probably won't work so well if cameras are really important. But yeah, I think a lot of the things that I found with the hybrid as well is around trust. So some of the things we take for granted when we can see people, we kind of need some more validation or connection when we can't see them and they're not in the same space as us. So it's about how you build that trust, how you build that connection, how you know that they're okay, or that they don't need help because you can't see them struggling, or do you know what I mean? There's something about getting more in tune with that I found personally a real challenge with hybrid, because usually I would have had a mix of being alone and then going into an office and connecting on a more personal level, and when I don't have that, I kind of feel a bit like I need some other tools in my toolbox, and so it's really stretched me, if I'm honest, about that particularly.
Yeah, because tone's quite different. You know, tone's always been an issue in text messages and email communication because people can interpret things in different ways just from how you write, and that's just naturally potentially how you write sometimes. So if your tone of writing is let's say it's not got any real personality to it because you can't necessarily be as sarcastic or as jovial as you would be, then it's very difficult to build a personal relationship with somebody unless you have this face-to-face, like this environment, or an actual face-to-face meeting. I guess, Uma, how do you approach that situation? How do you start to build a relationship with somebody? That sounds like I'm asking you for dating. How do you build a relationship with someone online? But is it important when you start to work with someone, if possible, get a meeting face to face and actually build that personality connection so that your tone of writing, your tone of text message, they can see you when you do it? Because there's some people who text me and I know exactly what their face is looking like when they're texting it. And there's some that I've never met and I'm like, I don't know.
Well, I mean, if you're asking an introvert, I would always start making connections anytime, anywhere, because I mean, I would love to make connections through this. I mean, we are talking in a work from home environment, but yes, this is a difficulty for an extrovert especially. I mean, they want to have a face-to-face connection, but yes, when you are a little away from the person and you cannot feel the body language and you cannot feel the same aura of the same place where you are sitting, so it's if let's say if the office environment is not very conducive for a person where the person is sitting, you can ask the person to have a good chat in a coffee shop somewhere. But if you are doing it on a video conference, you cannot ask this from the person. So it's for a coach. I mean, we do a lot of coaching also. It's essentially important for us, in fact, to have a face-to-face conversation, sitting in the same room, sitting in the same environment, experiencing the same surrounding that person is going through. So that is very essentially important for any coach. But once it is, I think when it is a corporate organization, when they are having conversations in terms of business meetings, or there are some weekly meetings, and if people are sitting into different cities or into different offices in the same city, it's a good, I think, business sense also that you are doing conference calling or you're doing Zoom meetings there, so that you could save a lot of money there. But at the same time, when it comes to the HR, when it comes to understanding the people, when it comes to understanding how they are thinking, or how they are feeling in certain situation, we need to get out of our comfort zone. I mean, I have to do it. When I'm moving out of the office, when I'm moving out of my home office, when I'm going to meet anyone, or to counsel anyone or coach anyone, I have to get out of my comfort zone and actually drive down there and reach to that person. I mean, that's the beauty of HR. In fact, if we are into HR, so that's the beauty of HR, that you have to come out of your whatever you think that is right for you, and consider that how more impactful you will be when you will be with that person or sitting in the same shoes that the person is sitting there. So I think that's very important in terms of the profession that you are in. For us into HR profession, we have to move out of this thing, and do a lot of hybrid working, I think. And for those who are not into that coaching profession or counseling profession, for them it is quite understandable and good that they should be continuing their work from home thing and doing all these stuff, in fact.
Sharon, we've talked a lot about hybrid working, and I think we've mentioned 3 different versions of hybrid working. So if someone is struggling to understand what hybrid working is, how would you frame it? How would you explain to someone what a hybrid working system is?
I think it's really dependent on the context. So if I think the reason why this conversation has come up to the fore is obviously because of the pandemic and people being kind of locked down to varying different degrees in their different contexts. And I think that so for some people, hybrid working will be kind of the opportunity to work from home occasionally, or like one day a week, or I mean, like I said, I've got 2 different clients at the moment who have a completely different approach to it. One has got contracts that say home is their base. They've got kind of hubs, but the majority of the time people are working remotely, completely globally as well, and they're a smaller business, and so for them hybrid working is that remote first, connectivity through tools, coming in and congregating around offices or hubs, and traveling to see each other occasionally. But for another client, they've got quite a fixed view of what it is. 1 or 2 days in the office, at least 2 days, etc. And my husband, throughout the pandemic, he was in the office all of the time. Well, he works in a hospital, but he was in his hospital office all of the time, and so he's occasionally working remotely. And of course, people in retail, for example, if you're in the service industry, you're kind of serving customers, my guess would be that there might, the business context really matters, and the needs of the business and the purpose with which you're kind of working really matters. So I think I think what it's done is open up the opportunity to say that for people in certain contexts, you don't need to be in an office. We can work productively, it can be done, but I think hybrid is determined usually by the context of the business that you're in, and therefore you need to kind of work it out, and maybe it will attract more talent if you've got a remote first approach, for example, or different talent, maybe. It's kind of, who knows.
That's the thing, Lee, you are that, for example, talent a company in Colchester is able to attract, because you're happy to travel around. But if they said you had to move to Colchester, they probably wouldn't have you delivering all your wonderful training for them. And really, hybrid does give organizations the opportunity to be innovative and attract a level of talent that they probably wouldn't have if they're just stuck to their geography, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, firstly, I challenge, I don't know if they'd describe me as talent that they've attracted from elsewhere. But yeah, you're right. I couldn't do this job if in an industry that I absolutely love as well, working with cars. I couldn't do the job if I'd been asked to move to Colchester, because we've got a house here, we're setting up our life here, and at the end of the day, it's people, isn't it? And that's what we're doing here in York. So I'm not looking to move to Colchester or Milton Keynes or anywhere like that elsewhere. So I couldn't have applied for the job. In fact, I nearly didn't apply for the job because I thought that was the location. It was only through a conversation through LinkedIn that fortunately I found out I could do it from home. And I suppose on the flip side of that, the business has in its call center in the past, as it's kind of finding its feet with its call center, and the pandemic started to, things opened up a little bit. It said everyone had to come back to the office for the call center, which meant that we lost a lot of people, because we had managed to attract talent from various different areas of the country, or in our case, various areas of the Midlands, and they didn't want to drive to one particular location to do the same job that they could do from home every single day. Whether they'd see that as a bit of a learn, I'm not really sure. I think whether we explore what the options are there in the future, I don't know, but I've certainly seen it, that flip side of that, where we've lost really good people, which has then had impact because we couldn't attract enough people in such a short, what's the word I'm looking for? Frame of time. There we go.
Yeah, just to can I, James? Speaking of talent, that talent acquisition and attracting good talent, in fact. Are you people experiencing this thing that candidates are also now expecting that there would be some portion of work from home in this position, and the employers are also using it as a branding for their employment, that yes there is that flexibility is one thing, but then there is a work from home portion, and there is a coming to office portion there also. So that I think is a very good selling point coming up for the employers, in fact, that how they are positioning themselves in terms of hybrid, if you call it a hybrid kind of a working, that you work 2 days at in home, and then the rest of 3 days in the office. I was talking to someone in Levi's, in fact, and Levi's Pakistan. They have specially introduced this thing, and they have not only put people from work from home, but they have also provided a lot of stuff, office stuff, to each of their managers and senior managers who are working from home, with starting from tables and chairs and printers and Wi-Fi's and all those office gadgets. And they have specially established a separate room into their and I think that lots of good multinationals and good employers are also doing it and promoting this as a good branding exercise for their employment. And how do you have experienced it?
I think one of the things, especially when you start to look on LinkedIn now, jobs, it says remote, it says hybrid, it says that's the location. It's now a location search, isn't it? But it doesn't. There's normally a sub location to it, and I think that's how people are trying to sort of advertise it. But there's a few more things going on, I think, that people are looking for. There's a big experiment going on a 4-day week at the moment. There's a big sign up to companies that are trying the 4-day week. There's a flexi time, which is great for some people in some jobs, but as Lee mentioned, a call center has to be available at certain times, and sometimes that can be quite difficult. There are some truths. I'll say truths, and I'll read some of them out to you, and just shake your head if you disagree with them, and nod if you do, and then I'll come to you if I think you're wrong. The best way to work is done in 5 shifts of 8 hours. For example, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. No. The optimum working week is around about 40 hours. There's a yes and a no there.
I just thought, kind of optimum. Where are these things coming from?
Organisation beliefs.
I think James wrote them.
I have actually got them. I'm referencing him twice in one thing. I've actually got them from Gary.
God, I need to say to Gary that I don't know whether I would agree with that. This is the true or false? It must be a questionnaire, surely.
These are some wrongly held truths that have actually been disproved. And that people need to live close enough to their place of work to be able to get there on any given day, which obviously that you have proven to be distrue. But some people do still hold these beliefs, and it kind of links us back to the government and what they're saying, that people need to be back in the office because things don't work. Things are not working with people working from home, and it's just not true, and the evidence is not proving it. I mean, Sharon, you sent me a list of 6 books, I think, just proving exactly what the Prime Minister said.
But remember, though, the thing that fascinates me about this is it's not all about research or evidence or whatever. There's a lot of other drivers that kind of drive political figures or CEOs or to get people back to the office. And that could be to do with I've got a shed load of my P&L, kind of my money tied up in a big long lease, and I've got nobody in it. Or I'm a bit concerned about how we kind of maybe it's a challenge for our managers and leaders to be able to manage and lead in the same way as they used to do pre-pandemic, in a way that is much more disparate, asynchronous, kind of globally connected teams. There's a lot of other things that are going on there, as well as whether our Prime Minister has a lack of motivation to be able to concentrate on his work without going to the fridge. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's going on there, isn't there, that isn't all to do with to do with whether or not it's productive or motivational or research-based or evidence-based, I would say. That would be my kind of take on it.
Yeah, and I think probably we need to. There is an element of a lot of our culture and a lot of our country has been built on people go to work, they go out for their lunch. There's a whole economic boom associated to it. You know, and you mentioned leases and things like that. But since the rise of Amazon, Lee, and other online retailers, we are seeing the high street is getting smaller and smaller, and shops are getting less and less, and we're being sort of pushed into shopping centres, so to speak, and less high street work is going on. It's not the right time to be in retail, really, is it? I would say.
I think it is if you're willing to adapt. And I've been talking about this with some friends recently, actually. The high street is changing, and businesses that operate on the high street, they've done the research into it. Some of it has been published. The high street is changing, and I think as long as those businesses adapt and go with it, then they'll survive. And I think where the businesses very sadly fail, new opportunities do arise as well, which what I mean by that is it doesn't leave this huge gap in employment and all of a sudden no one can work on the high street. And I think the change that we're seeing, if you think about when was the last time you went to a city centre or high street, what was it for? It used to be to go and buy a product that you wanted. You know, you're going out that night, you want to buy a jacket, a t-shirt, whatever, and so you go and look in all the different shops. That are probably the same shops in every high street. Certainly in the UK, we've got a few clone towns, and you go and find the t-shirt that you want and you pay for it and leave. Where now, the high street, think about when the last time you went to the high street, probably wasn't to do that. It was probably to go and socialise. So I think the more town centres can turn into an experience rather than shops. And when I look at York City Centre and the challenges that York City Centre's had, particularly on the shopping street, for want of a better word, the whole, like, York City Centre is changing and it's shifting from one place to another, where all those shops, that big line of those brands that we're all used to on a high street, and slowly they're dropping out one by one because the rents are expensive and so on, and there's no footfall anymore. You've got this whole other area of the city centre that's opening up, which has got crazy golf in it, which has got Harry Potter experiences, which has got afternoon teas in it, cafes, coffee shops. Game is a really good example of that, where people don't just go to buy a game anymore. Because, like you say, you could do it on Amazon probably quicker without going out in the inevitable rain, and probably get it cheaper online or on eBay pre-owned or whatever it might be. But they go there to have that social side and play the games have tournaments and things like that inside of game. And then the same with bookstores. Waterstones now has Costas inside it and coffee shops inside it, so you get that social element from going and reading and spending time there, because again, you get your books on Amazon instead.
I think that's such an important point that we could think of from a people perspective. The experience, the purpose, the evolution, the change, how we respond to the change, I think is that, and it is so transferable in terms of a theme, and then also the challenges it gives, to kind of Uma's point about the kind of coaching when we need to be in person, when we can do things remotely. I think it's made me a lot more mindful of a lot more mindful of the times when maybe that is more beneficial, or the purpose is really important, or the other things that I need to do in order to create the right conditions. Whereas I think maybe I was a little bit I think I was maybe kind of not just kind of overusing certain things, because without really thinking about it. Do you know what I mean? I can leave that because I'm going to be in the office. I'll probably bump into them. I'll get that done. Whereas now I have to be a bit more kind of mindful of, well, they might not be there. I go in on a Thursday to one of my clients. What if the person I'm wanting to speak to, bump into, isn't there? I'm going to have to do something else. So I think it's kind of stretched me and made me a bit more thinking, and I think that thoughtful about things. And I think the experience of being in the office, and I'm not talking about the places where I've worked where they get table football or kind of slides in the office, or limitless drinks or whatever people want to do to try and kind of draw you in. I think it's got to be yes, a bit of a destination, but also with purpose and meaning and kind of engaging, like so that people want to be there for the purpose that they're there, but also have that space to not be there if they can within their work. And I think that feels quite exciting to me. If we can navigate this kind of strange in between period, then we could get the experience that Lee's talking about, a different kind of workplace / high street, if we're trying to make the synergy. So I think there's opportunity out there, I think. Really is.
I think you've both raised a really good point, and I think there's an element now where socialization in an organization, people just used to, companies just used to let it happen. People go out, they'll do this, they'll have drinks and stuff like that, but they almost need to facilitate the opportunity so people don't feel guilty to do it. So they can go to game or they can go to table football. I've seen some great 3D rooms where people put glasses on and they're in a virtual world and they do something together and it's team building and try to, not turn it into this big away day thing. I'm assuming similar things are happening in Pakistan, Umar. I'm assuming the high street's getting stretched and everything's needing to evolve, really.
Yeah, of course. It's good that the perspective from our side is, same kind of humans live here, and the same things happening here also. But in our case, it is even more important because the opportunities for going out and entertainment are even lesser here. So it's for this region, all the subcontinent, and India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. All these there are less entertainment opportunities. So one, going to the office is of course a bread earning, but on the other hand, it is a good socializing activity for people, and it is something which people make friends and people make go out of their houses and they feel like connected with other people, and that connection is basically is a key here in this region. And we specifically and there is a family environment, and all the HR people for now, I think last 2 decades are now promoting all these family organizations. And they're saying that we are a team and we are a family and we are working together and we have lots of commonalities to share amongst us. And now, if they are not going to the offices and they don't have anything common things to share, that would be a difficult thing for them to digest. But one thing that we should always be mindful of, I felt this in our scenario, and I think in the global organizations also, that there should be a good balance between the kind of digitization that is coming up, the kind of change that organizations are going through, the kind of stress, the financial stress the companies are now facing, the kind of economic crunch that is happening globally. In fact, organizations do need to consider new ways of making their business profitable. And this is one of the very key ways that the real estate is skyrocketing. The 1 square feet of a person is occupying in an organization is an expense, of course, and organizations are thinking in this way, that how we can have co-sharing offices, how we can have offices also where people could come and then leave. And that's how I think the flexible working hours coming in, that's how the co-sharing places concepts are coming in, and that's why all the work from home opportunities are coming in also. And I think there is another element that we must be focusing on, is that the millennium generation that is coming in, they are more tuned towards the screens from the very beginning of their lives. They are looking at screens quite much often than how we used to be seeing them, and they are quite adaptable to these screens, and they are quite friendly with these all these screens. Although that's not very good, but yes, they are. I mean, the man-to-man connection is even we consider, the people of our generation think that face-to-face conversation or face-to-face contact is very important. But I think the kids who are born after 2010, I mean, there are still in schools. I think for them, the screen is even friendlier. So we need to consider their thing also. I mean, when they will be into the job market, how they will be approaching this whole scenario.
So just to finish off, I'm going to give you a quick example, and then I'm going to ask you one thing you think an organization should be considering, or a HR person should be championing, to create a hybrid working environment. For me, there was a company, I think it's AAT, which is an accounting technician. They had complete flexi desks. You had your set of drawers in a little thing. They called it a poodle. When you came into the office, you got your poodle if you were in the office that day, and had your stuff in it and stuff like that, so you could set up a work environment that felt comfortable whenever you came into the office or anything like that. And I quite liked that as a way to sort of not feel like you're a stranger in an office. Sharon, I'm going to start with you. What one thing should a company do to try and help people embrace hybrid working? It doesn't have to be the solution, just a solution.
No, I think the one thing I would say is be honest about it. Be honest about what it means for your organization and articulate that. Bring it to life. I think that's the thing, because I think that we can't imagine that it's just one thing. Just bring it to life so that the people in your organization know what hybrid means for them, and just be honest about it, honest and open. I think that's what I would say. And then you can get all of the technology, the gadgets, but what does it mean for us is what I would say is a key thing to make it a success.
Lee?
For me, line manager capability. I think, does the business know what its tone of voice is internally to be able to manage people? I suppose, in a way, to bring to life what Sharon, you've just said. Do we know how to support people in the right way if they're from home? Do we know how to spot the warning signs with mental health? Even though we're not right next to people and having that connection that you might otherwise see, do we know how to check in with people in the right way, set objectives? What's the tone of voice of the organisation, and how can we bring it to life through line managers? Because we've got a lot of, I love seeing line managers being promoted from within, and you've probably got managers now that are going back to a management position where they've managed face-to-face in the past, so they're not used to this hybrid situation or working from home situation. So do they know how to do it in this context? Because it is different. So I think line management capability is probably mine.
Anuma, to round us off.
Yeah, that's. You covered everything, both of you.
There wasn't much left, was there?
But no. I think this is basically HR should be privy of. Should understand the business model of the organization and the culture that is prevailing in that area. I mean how. If a business model of the organization is such that can afford to have a hybrid working, they can. I mean, there are lots of organizations they can't afford to have that kind of work structure within the organization. So the first thing is that business model of the organization and the purpose for which that organization has come. If it is making profit, I mean, organizations are there for profit. I mean, if they are not making profit because of that hybrid working, HR's role is to understand that yes, they have to come up with some other ideas for making that big, and that's how the business acumen of an HR professional should be coming in. I mean, without business acumen, I mean, there isn't anything that HR people can contribute towards a good organization success.
Brilliant. Just to summarize some of what we discussed, yes, it's great to offer hybrid working and offer solutions, but we need to be able to understand the business context and the pros and cons of making certain decisions on the performance of the business. Don't lie and say that you're going to be working, from home 4 days a week, and then it only ends up being 1 day a week and you're in the office 4. Be honest about it. and ask for help. If you're new to managing, you're an accidental manager, which is not an uncommon thing. It's not a derogatory term. People get promoted because you deserve it, but you need support to make you a great manager and then to turn you into an even better leader. These are the things HR should be doing to help people integrate hybrid working. I'm sorry, Mr. Prime Minister, we disagree with your statements. We disagree that working from home doesn't work. We firmly believe hybrid is the way forward, but it needs to be in the right way, delivered at the right time. This has been Let's Talk HR. This has been Work from Home. Thank you very much, Sharon, Lee, and Uma, for your time. We will catch you on the next one.